Swadika, welcome to ASEAN Talks on ASEAN TV. I am Tulip, Naksompop, your host in this episode. Now we have been talking with a lot of business operators about the flood hit area and their business opportunity, the damage and their rehabilitation. Today we will take a look at another thing during flood, which is the archaeology site. We have the Chief of Culture Unit of the UNESCO Regional Office Asia Pacific, Dr. Tim Curtis, with us. Swadika.
Swadika.
First of all, thank you very much to accept the invitation to come talk to us today. So as I understand, the government has invited the experts to UNESCO.
Correct. Thank you, Tulip, for having me here. Yes, the government puts in the request to UNESCO, although we've been speaking a lot to them, and there's a lot of Thai expertise, but there has been some areas where they have asked us to help source some experts to assess the damage on the site. Yeah.
So it's also the normal procedure for UNESCO for taking care of overall the heritage site?
Absolutely, because in fact, well, it's the governments that concerned countries that take care of the sites, and UNESCO provides support when requested on it. But it's still mainly the country that takes care of a World Heritage Site, yes.
So as I understand, you send in three experts?
At the moment, there's been a team of 3 experts who've gone to the site just last week. A mural painting expert from Italy, a hydrologist based in Holland, in our institute in Holland, and 2 Japanese experts on conservation as well, who visited the site. There will be some more Japanese experts going next week, I believe, on the 21st, in 2 weeks. And we will also bring in another expert from Italy, from Venice, on urban planning and heritage within a water city. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the. Oh, I know. I said before that it's a standard procedure of the UNESCO, and is this the same thing you do for other heritage sites so far that has been hit by flood?
Yeah, this is, there's what we call, there's a special emergency fund request. So it may be floods, it may be other disasters such as earthquakes, or even human disasters, where there's a special fund which can be accessed at the request of governments to provide expertise in terms of determining damage and what kinds of interventions are needed. So yes, in a way it's a relatively common procedure for us to assist with these post-disaster issues. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about a similar case that has been assessed by the UNESCO?
There were floods in Pakistan last year, where there was a number of heritage sites where we were also able to provide some assistance through the World Heritage Center and the World Heritage Fund on the expertise. We've had all sorts of disaster sites, I'm thinking in Asia. Of course, in 2003, the Bam earthquake in Iran was a very serious earthquake with very serious damage. Or even the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas, which was completely human motivated, but it's still a disaster for the heritage site.
Right.
So these are the kinds of areas where UNESCO has been able to work with the concerned authorities to rehabilitate the sites. And often it also involves trying to mobilize other countries to come on board and offer their expertise as well. Yeah.
Since UNESCO has experts from many foreign countries, does language barrier play some parts in communication?
Sure. Well, we try to be able to communicate amongst experts, and sometimes we have to do some translating work.
Right.
But if the expert has the best expertise, then that's what counts. Eventually, it's easier usually to find a translator than to find a very detailed expert. So yeah.
Right. Okay. I think the part that everyone wants to know the most is what is the preliminary assessment of Ayuthaya archaeology site?
Well, clearly there's been some damage. I mean, the site has been submerged basically since October 4th, and parts of the site are still submerged. There's a fair amount of decorative damage. For instance, the mural expert was quite concerned. There's a lot of salt and there's some algae. And so some of the decorative work has been, there's a need for rehabilitation. There's some damage. There is some structural damage, although we are not yet sure the extent to how much. There are some walls that have collapsed.
Ooh.
We don't know yet how much damage is in the foundations of the buildings.
Right.
And so that'll take probably 3 months, with some engineers testing to see if the buildings have moved a little bit and shifted, and if there's need for intervention to actually keep some of the buildings standing. Part of these sites have been damaged over the years in previous floods.
Right,
so
right.
we have to determine what is the result of this flood, or what was already. You may see a building that's leaning a little bit,
Right.
but that may have been leaning for the last 100 years,
True.
in which case it's stabilized now.
Right.
The next 3 months, which will be a drying up period, will be crucial, because that's when the stabilization effects can happen. And if there are structural issues, as it dries up, the building may suffer. So we'll be monitoring with mainly Thai experts, but monitoring very closely those kind of structural issues. And it's too early to know exactly yet. But,
So it seems like a really big long-term project.
there is going to need quite a lot of work. Yes, I know that the Fine Arts Department in Thailand have requested a relatively substantial budget, and I think it's justified. I think it's a very important site. It's a World Heritage Site. It's also a very important site for Thailand. So I do hope that the kinds of resources required will be found. Yeah.
So we do have to wait until it's completely dry to do another kind of.
The testing is starting now, but as it dries out, there may be interventions that are needed. If a building has shifted some of its gravity, so to speak, or its weight, when it's wet, as it dries out, that can shift again. And if that process isn't monitored, that can cause extra damage because of the. I'm not an engineer, but this is what
Right.
the engineers tell us. Yeah.
What is the first reaction when you ask the expert teams after they went out and
When they came back?
Yeah, when they came back.
Well, they were still looking at details, and so I think.
Is it very worrisome, or
It's no, well, yes and no. It is very worrisome in some areas. The mural expert was the mural paintings have been damaged, and that needs to be paid attention to. The structural damage, we're hoping, is not as bad as it might be. This
Right.
city has been flooded before.
Right.
But it's still too early to know exactly.
Right.
The hydrological people were talking more about just general what kind of management of the water to avoid this in the future.
The infrastructure plan.
Yeah, infrastructure plan. And again, the city was designed for flooding in the old days. So some of those original designs have been abandoned, and that has probably made the situation worse.
So you were talking about the suggestion that maybe they should reopening the ancient canal in Ayuthaya. Is that a suggestion from the hydrologist?
Well, there's a number of experts, including a lot of Thai experts from the ICOMOS Thailand, architects, conservation experts, engineers, and we have been discussing whether this would help. And the hydrological people think they want to look into the study. Possibly yes, because there needs to be both micro and macro water management issues. There needs to be water management within the ancient city, but then the whole sort of province also has to be looked at, because there used to be large floodplains where water could move, which
It's a lowland
now
area.
have been built up into roads and all sorts of things that are not necessarily allowing the water to move as it used to in the old days. So we are looking into, but we think a preliminary, and it's, yes, opening up the ancient canals might allow the water at least to have exited more quickly. One of the options also being put on the table is rebuilding the wall, the ancient wall around the city, although we're not quite sure yet whether that's just in discussion stages. Yeah,
Because it's more like local people live just next to the wall of the ancient city, or even in.
Yeah. So that's definitely an issue with the site. This is a lived World Heritage Site where the community lives. I think it's very important to engage with the community. The community can benefit from the site if it's managed properly, if they are included in the conservation works. For instance, rehabilitation of a heritage site like this generates a lot of employment. You need a lot of people working on the site. So if there is rehabilitation work, it would be wise to hire people from the community, and that gives them some work in this period to go, and then they feel invested in the site. And then how is tourism being managed? How can the site visitor experience be improved so as to generate more revenue for the community? I think all of this needs to be tied in with the reconstruction and heritage work and water management work. So it's all part of something where people can see their benefits. Again, the wall, we're not sure. It's just an idea out there. The canals, it's looking more likely that it might be worth doing, but we still need to do some more testing. I might just add, what's interesting is that the city, as I said, the original planners of the city had floods in mind.
Right. So
they knew.
So they planned to deal with the
floods,
water.
Yes.
Right. So can we say that the later generation kind of forget about what's really that city built on, and we were just too focused or concentrate on the modern infrastructure and modern way of living?
To a certain degree, I think that would be a fair assessment. And I'll say to a certain degree, I'll say a couple of things. This is my opinion. Yes, I think some of the ancient town planning methods like the canals have been ignored.
Right.
And that would have helped. Of course, today there are other pressures that didn't exist in the past, just the number of population and the sheer number of people. So you couldn't purely rely on the past. You would still need to have new technologies brought in, new science and all of that. However, I do think perhaps there has been a sort of short-term gain approach. Let's build a shopping mall here or a parking lot here and fill in this, or build a road and accommodate. And bit by bit, all of that has encroached on the overall original design, which again is quite a brilliant piece of town planning for a floodplain. I mean, the site is at the convergence of 3 rivers. And flooding, it was chosen there partly because that was a great protection against enemies. If you're in the middle of a flood zone, it's difficult for enemies to get to you. So they knew what they were doing. So it would be worth respecting that and going back and trying to respect at least that.
Right.
And build from it and build the modern from that, not just ignore it and start as if it was never there. Yeah.
So they probably need the re-infrastructuring the city?
Well, that's a big thing. I don't want to say that yet. We don't know. We're talking maybe canals, a few canals. Re-infrastructuring the whole city is probably beyond what we are looking.
But maybe this is a good time to do it because the whole city has been flooded. It's almost have to start at even under zero.
Yeah, I can't say that. I can't tell you. I don't know.
Well, I'm just talking from my own opinion as a Thai people that think that we really need to take this seriously, and maybe it's a good time to really rethinking and start it since it's all flooded and now it's like a cleaning day and whatever. So maybe it's a good time to rethink about it. But anyway, we'll take a short break and we'll come back and talk more about the assessment and rehabilitation plan. What else UNESCO think about the heritage site and what we're going to do next. Stay tuned.